Hey, how you guys doing? So this is Neil, and I thought I'd do something different in this video. I thought I would show how you can be successful in art, or how you can be a successful artist, and how I, in many different ways, have become a successful artist throughout the years, and different ways that have been a successful artist, and how this can help you as well. One of the most important things I ever heard, and that was make sure your portfolio is good. Work on your portfolio. If you have a good portfolio, you can go out and get a job doing art. And I was like, yeah, but don't you need schooling, all this kind of stuff? And actually, I heard this from my graphic design teacher when I was taking graphic design in San Jose, California. So important. If you actually listen to a lot of these artists that work for video game companies and animation studios and working for comics and so forth, they'll say like the most important thing you can have is your portfolio, not your schooling, not where you went to school. These companies really don't care about that much. They want to see a good portfolio. They want to see that you know how to draw the human figure, that you know how to draw it well, that you know how to draw it from different angles, from obscure angles like looking up, looking down. They want to know that you can put together a scene. They want to know that you can draw hands, that you can draw feet, that you can draw nice emotions, emotive faces, emotive poses, and so forth. All the stuff that I teach how to do at masterpaintingnow.com. So why is that so important? Because it tells the person that you know the topic, you know how to do. Like they can teach you all the other stuff. They can teach you how to use the software. They can teach you the flow and all that kind of stuff and how to work within their company. But they can't teach you how to draw. They don't have time for that. You have to know how to draw already. You have to have the foundations of everything, of painting and all that stuff, and that is how to draw. The greatest thing you can know how to do is how to draw, and how to draw well. Not just how to ink or how to color. It's going to be a lot harder to get a job if you only have that one aspect. So definitely learn the foundations, learn how to draw, learn form, learn shading, how lighting works, how lighting falls upon objects. Start with the basic shapes and work your way up. It's absolutely mandatory you have to do that. And that's the new course I'm actually working on, is the fundamentals of drawing anything. And it'll be out soon. But anyway, let's get back to how to make money as an artist, how to actually make it. Now, I'm going to talk about freelance ways to make money. I'm going to talk about how to actually land a good job. And both of these include having a good portfolio. So you got to think about the industry you're going into. So if you want to be a graphic designer and you want to specialize in doing logos, for example, then you want to make sure that most of your portfolio has a lot of logo design and make sure that they're really good. But you also want to put in there other designs, illustrations that show your ability to draw the human figure. It's the most difficult thing to draw, and it's a thing that will let other people know that, hey, this person knows how to draw, and it impresses people in general. Have a few portraits in there. Portraiture is just well regarded by everybody as, hey, that person's a good artist. So if you have a good portraits in there, a couple good portraits, that's going to help you tremendously. Even if you're just trying to do graphic design, you just want to do, let's say, like I said, logos and stuff like that. They're more likely to hire you if they see that you're a great artist. That is, that they see that a couple good portraits, a couple good hand drawings, and a couple good figure drawings where they can see the entire figure and that you know what you're doing when it comes to the figure. Like, hey, this guy knows how to draw well. So if they ever needed to, if they ever came across a logo where it needed a really good illustration, most graphic designers aren't good at drawing, just like most tattoo artists aren't good at drawing. So that's something to keep in mind, is to have that in your portfolio along with all those logos. And so what made me realize this was back when I was working back when I was going to school for graphic design, because I thought, hey, I have to go to school, right? It's something I have to do. And it's really not. You really just need to, learn and apply that knowledge to a good portfolio. And you can do that through schooling, which will take a lot longer than doing it through, like, let's say my courses or something, but that choice is up to you. I wish I had made different choices. I would have been a lot farther, or I would have got to where I was a lot faster probably. Anyway, so one day I'm teaching Photoshop in the class, and that's when I realized, what, hey, I'm a pretty good teacher, because this guy was teaching, how to do graphic design and stuff, and we were understanding and everything. He was also teaching Photoshop a little bit, and then I noticed that some students are having trouble, and I had already been teaching myself Photoshop for years. I started back with like Photoshop 3, I think. I'm gonna be 40 this year, and I started, or actually this month, Not this year, this year too, but yeah, anyway, this month I'll be 40, and that's in March. Anyway, so back when I was about 20, I started with Photoshop. And so by the time I went to graphic design school, I had already been, teaching myself Photoshop for a few years, and I knew I knew the software quite well. And so the teacher realized this, and he said, "Hey, do you mind helping out? There's a bunch of students, because he couldn't get to everybody, and he's like, do you mind helping out with Photoshop, like just help them understand some things?" And that's when I realized I was good at explaining, because he had already explained a lot of this stuff to them, but they weren't getting it. But when I went and explained these exact same concepts of how to use Photoshop, they understood it. I had some way of teaching that broke down a more complicated topic and made it easier to understand. And that's when I realized, hey, I'm pretty good at teaching. I realized it a long time before that too, with teaching my friends and stuff how to throw proper punches and kicks and fighting when I started with Muay Thai and had already had some kickboxing background. So I was like, hey, I'm pretty good at helping people understand things. That's cool. But at that point, I didn't think I want to be a teacher for a living or anything. I want to teach art for a living, or, I didn't think about that at all. I still wanted to be not necessarily a graphic designer. I wanted a job in art, and I thought the graphic design would be a good place to start. And anyway, one day I come into class early as always, and my teacher says, "Why are you still here?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I had already completed one, I guess they call it a semester in a regular college of graphic design. Now I was moving on to the second class, so where it gets more in depth into graphic design. And I said, "What do you mean? I want to finish school." He goes, "No." He's like, "You don't need to be here anymore." I'm like, "I don't understand what you mean." I thought he was like kick me out of class or something. And he says, he says, "You're a good artist. You already know all this stuff. You already know Photoshop. You already know the leading, software in the industry. You know Illustrator. You know all this stuff already, and you're a great artist. You know how to draw. Just put together a good portfolio." And he recommended me some things to put in my portfolio. He's like, if you want to go into graphic design, make sure you have some logos in there. Make sure you have some letterhead designs and all the typical stationery stuff, business cards and whatnot. He's like, but also put together a good portfolio of drawings, of good paintings, whatever it is that you work, good Photoshop work. Put some of your figure drawings in there. Put some of your portfolios, or excuse me, your portrait drawings in there. And I was like, okay. And so I did that. And he says, no, just go apply for a job. So I did. I listened to him. And I went and applied for a job, and I got the job that very day. The very day I applied, I got it. The very first job I applied for, actually, I got it. And that's when I realized, I probably should have shot higher. Because I thought, I'll go for a mid-grade company. Not like a super big company, just a mid-grade company. And I should have went for the super big company, because if I got the job so easily at a mid-grade company, it's likely I could have got a job at a big company, since I got it so easily. Literally the very first place I walked into. And guess what got me the job? Not my schooling, not how good I talked, not my sales pitch. None of that got me the job. What got me the job was when he opened my portfolio. His name was Ray Valergas. I actually remember this. It's when he opened my portfolio. That's when I got the job. He opens my portfolio, and I put all my graphic design stuff in the beginning of my portfolio, thinking that's what's going to dazzle him. My logo designs, my knowledge and ability to design stuff, to put things together in a way that is coherent and makes a cool design. I thought that would be it. That's what's going to get my job right there. So I put all that in the front of my portfolio. He flips through it very fast, like he doesn't really care. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not going to get this job. He's not impressed at all. He's just flipping through my graphic design stuff like it's nothing. Like it's whatever. And then he stops when he comes upon one of my portraits. He's like, "You drew this?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I drew that. That's why it's in my portfolio, And I didn't say it like that. I said, yeah, I drew that. And he goes, "This is really good." And I'm like, why does that matter? I'm going to be doing logos and stuff. Like, how often do you put a portrait in a logo, And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm thinking that's neat. I'm thinking, okay, I didn't get the job. He's interested in my portraiture. He's probably just wants me to do a portrait of his daughter or something, and then I'll never hear from the guy again. He flips through a few more pages, and he slows down every time he comes across one of my drawings. And he sees a figure drawing I did, and he's like, "This is good." And he sees there's a picture of just a bunch of hand drawings. He's like, "These are nice." He's like, "You know what?" He's like, "Do you want to work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I want to work here." So I'm thinking in my head, that's why I applied for the job, He was like, "All right." And within a month, I was the sole person that ran his company for him. I was basically the art director, and so anything that came in, I got to choose and pick what I wanted to do. Of course, I chose all the illustration stuff, the stuff where it was more drawing involved, not so much designing, because I liked illustrating, I liked drawing and painting. I like that kind of stuff more than just coming up with a good logo design or putting letters together in some fancy way that, makes a good concept design, makes someone go, wow, I like that, that looks good. So why am I telling this story? What does all this have to do with you? How is this going to make you successful as an artist? Hopefully you've kind of put some of it together already. It's a story to show you that knowing how to draw the fundamentals is what got me that job. Not knowing how to put together, good logos. That's not what got me the job. And within no time, I was pretty much running his company. He hardly ever even came in anymore. He pretty much, like, I opened, I closed, I answered the phones, and like, well, we didn't get like a whole bunch of phone calls. But I answered the phone whenever someone called about a design because he trusted me to handle that and decide whether or not it's a job we wanted or a job I wanted, and whether or not it was something that we can do and fulfill for this client. And yeah, so I did everything. Just about, basically, he took advantage of me. I was young and I didn't know a lot about business, so but it was fine. I liked it. It was fun. I got paid good money and stuff. And then I went freelance for a while and started doing freelance work where I pick and chose. Basically, I worked for different graphic design companies, and whenever I said, hey, look at, I can do all that logo stuff, but I'm sure you already have people that do all that for you. But I know where you struggle. And this is where every graphic design company struggles. With illustration, with actual drawing, because most of those guys can't draw, or females, etc. Etc. As if there's more than males and females on Earth, right? That's when I realized that that's what got me the job, and that a lot of these graphic design guys and females couldn't draw well. They can design well, but they couldn't draw well. I saw the hole that was in most every graphic design company. They needed to outsource whenever someone needed a logo that required drawing. They're like, hey, I want this logo where there's this a full picture of a full-bodied figure. I want it in the style of whatever artist they pick, and they kind of like want this fashion design type style to the figure, and I want her wearing this, and I want her doing that, and that's when they had to outsource because no one in the company can draw. They can just design logos, and they can't draw. That in that case, that person didn't just want a logo; they wanted a logo that involved illustration, that involved actual drawing. And so once I realized that, that's when I started getting a lot of freelance work, doing that kind of stuff for graphic design companies. So whenever they needed, they would outsource to people like me. And I just underpitched everybody else. That's how I got started. I know it sounds like a bad way to go about it, maybe, like underselling yourself. It's not necessarily the best move to do, I don't know, but it worked for me. And I think maybe it could be a good move because you can always undersell yourself and then slowly start charging more and more and demanding more and more as you realize that, hey, I'm overflowing with work. You can start being choosy. Once you start getting so many jobs coming in, you can start being picky about you can start turning jobs down. Like, whoa, that's a grand idea, huh? So now you're not just like waiting for the job to come in. You got so many jobs coming in that you are able to be picky and choose which jobs you want to do. Like, I don't really care to draw that. I don't want that job. So just if you just give them a higher price range, then in other words, you're like, I really want to draw that, but for this price range, I would draw it. I'll take the job. And so you're being more picky by just going, or you just flat turn it down if you want to. But now you can start charging more. And so now you're making more for what you're actually worth. And it was all because you learned the foundations, the fundamentals of drawing, because you know how to draw well. And that, if you know how to draw well, you can learn how to paint well. That's just a medium, right? Oils or digital painting, or whether it's using Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint, or also formerly known as Manga Studio, or Painter, or whatever. Doesn't matter. That's just a medium, right? So digital painting is just a medium. Oil painting is a medium. Watercolors is a medium. But foundation of a good painting is understanding the fundamentals of drawing, understanding, light and shadow and form, understanding perspective, understanding composition, understanding how to tell a story within that work, all this kind of stuff, and being able to draw that stuff well, make it look really good. That's what is going to get you your jobs. And so anyway, I continued like that for a long time. So you can kind of see there's two different ways I've already talked about with telling you these stories on how you can make money. Let's review those really fast before we continue on. So one is putting together a good portfolio and going out to companies and applying. The worst that can happen is they just don't hire you, right? And the competition can be pretty fierce, but just do it. Go out there and start applying at these different companies. And if you want to be a comic book artist, you need to make a really good portfolio. That's what they care about. A really, really good portfolio. You need to show that you know how to pencil draw, right? So have a lot of good pencil drawings in there. Show that you know how to ink a lot of your pencil stuff. Show you know how to color a lot of your stuff. Mostly, you can do some traditional, but definitely have some digital stuff in there because that's the main way that comic books are done now is digitally. Make sure that in that portfolio you show that you know how to draw faces from different angles, that you know how to draw figures from different angles. Make sure your panels are dynamic. That is, you know how to tell good scenes. You need to really show something that stands out, that's different, that's on Marvel's level, that's not just static, kind of like side views. You need to really turn the camera around, play with different angles. What angle works better for this shot? What's the panel about? Is it about a character being powerful and strong? Maybe show it with the angle looking up at the character, showing that powerful and strong. If the character is kind of being shy, maybe show the angle looking more down at the character. And that's where you need to know how to draw a figure in perspective and everything in perspective. Definitely show some good background drawings. That is drawings of scenery, of cityscapes, of futuristic stuff, all kinds of stuff. Put a lot of at least have a page of hands, that is good hand drawings, feet, and make them all dynamic, really cool, like a page that when you look at it, you're like, wow, this is fun. Even though it's just a page of hands, it's actually something that you actually want to look at because they're dynamic, they're awesome. Right, so put together that portfolio and then start going to Comic Con, stuff like that. Start doing what you love to do. Actually start creating comic pages. Even if it's based on another comic already, not your own. Let's say you don't have that kind of imagination. Take another comic book and just start drawing panels with that character in it. And start drawing Batman, whatever. And take some of these Comic Cons and show these people your work. Make your work known. Show it to you. Start putting your work online. If people see that your work is good and that it stands out from the rest of the crowd, you're more likely to get that job. But then start also actually applying for the job you want. So it can't hurt, right? Just put together a good portfolio. You're thinking, oh, I don't know, but I don't have schooling. I didn't go to school. They don't care about that. Like, yeah, a little bit of schooling can help, but if you can show proficiency that you already know all the software that job requires you to know, so figure out what software that whatever the company uses. Typically, it's going to be Adobe Photoshop. For most things, you definitely need to know Adobe Photoshop. That's like hands down. You need to know that. So learn it and learn it well. But as long as you can, also if you can learn something like Clip Studio Paint though, and you know how to draw it that well, you still need to know Photoshop because they might want you to import it to Photoshop and do some touch-ups in Photoshop and then transport it in a PDF file or something like that. So just make sure that you know what softwares they choose. Make sure you at least learn Photoshop. That's like the starting point. I'd also recommend learning Clip Studio Paint because it's a fantastic software that can save you a lot of time, and it's just great for inking and just all kinds of stuff for painting. It's awesome software. Anyway, but Photoshop is going to be the standard. Make sure that you have drawings of things that they want to see, things that they do, and also make sure you, like I said, make sure there's some portraits in there. Make sure there's some nice face drawings in there as well, like comic face drawings if you want to do that. Let's say you want to illustrate covers for comics. That's a really, really competitive industry, but if you can blow someone away with cover design, if you show them a few covers that you've done and that you just did for fun, but they're awesome, they're fantastic, and they're like, wow, this is great cover art, like I can't believe that you're not working in the industry type of thing. That's how you're going to get the job as a good portfolio. So put together that portfolio, go start applying for jobs, And yeah, it might take you a while though, to get that portfolio, to get your experience level up to where someone wants to hire you. So if you're not that good of an artist and you just graduated from some famous art school, they're not going to care because you can't draw. They're not going to teach you how to draw. That's not what the company wants. The company wants someone that already knows how to draw, already knows how to draw good stuff, so you can't, the schooling doesn't really matter to most of these companies. Oh, look, I graduated from such and such school. Yeah, can you draw? Like they want to see your portfolio. Can you draw? And if you can't draw, they're not going to care what school you graduated from. That's not going to get you a job. So learn how to draw. And most of these schools, they don't teach you how to draw. They just don't. I mean, I've had people all the time email me saying, "Hey, I went to school for 4 years at that Academy of Arts in Berkeley, California, and I've learned more from your courses than I did in that entire 4 years." And that's an amazing thing, because they really don't teach how to draw. They don't. I mean, they teach a little bit, but they don't teach you enough to how to draw to where you can, like, when you're done with schooling, that you're a good artist, that you can draw good stuff. I guarantee you spent 4 years doing all the exercises in my courses, and you're going to be 10 times better the artist than after you've graduated 4 years of some art school. Guarantee it, absolutely. Because I actually teach you how to draw. Like, we go through the exercises all about drawing, learn how to draw. It's basically preparing you to put together that awesome portfolio that will get you that job. Okay, so the second one is freelancing. How do you get freelance jobs? The same way, having a good portfolio, right? Let's say you go to a launch, which is basically like an auction you're on auction for jobs. You're bidding on jobs, and a bunch of people are bidding on jobs. And believe me, a lot of them are bidding super low because they can, because they're in another country or something. They've made it more to where like you have to prove that you're from America and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. So it helps Americans get jobs easier, so that you're not getting outbid by someone from India or something like that. But typically, most of those guys that are underbidding you aren't nearly as good. So they might hire that person thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna get decent art," and then they don't, and then like, "Oh wow, I need to hire somebody different." So it's over the years, it's kind of turned more into, if you're American and you have good art and you have a decent price, you're more likely to get the job. But anyway, if you put together just a dynamic, awesome portfolio, and you go on Odesk, or you go on Freelancers, or go on Alance, or all these different kinds of places like that, these different sites where you're bidding on jobs, and they see your artwork and your artwork stands out from everyone else's, they're going to more likely hire you, especially if your price is reasonable. You might have to start off low and work your way up, and as you start getting overflow with clients, then you can start charging more and be picky about what jobs you want. And this applies with any kind of freelance stuff. And now the next thing is being your own marketer, entrepreneur, making money with your artwork in a different way. In this way, you're making money with your artwork by either selling your original paintings, selling prints, things like that. So how do you make money that way? Still, you want a good portfolio. In this case, what is your portfolio going to be? Well, it's mostly going to be of your best paintings, right? So that's what you're going to show on your site and your shop, and that's what you're going to show on your galleries in DeviantArt or wherever you decide to show your stuff. You need a place for them to see your work, and then you're most likely to sell your paintings. People like to see good artwork, and so if you have all this good artwork, and let's say you want to take commissions, right? That's a really good way to make money as a freelance artist, is taking commissions. Now, in order to make a living as an artist, if you don't go get a typical job, like either being a penciler, that's going to be the hardest thing to do as a comic artist, by the way, but you're more likely to be an inker or a colorist. So if you can just nail down inking and ink like no one else, and show that you can ink like no one else, you're going to get a job in the comic industry, because that's, inkers are needed, colorists are needed, pencilers aren't so much needed, because there's so many good artists that are competing to be pencilers. That's the people that actually design the panels, do all the sketching, and then do the actual drawing, and then you just, if you're the inker, you ink it. If you're the colorist, you color it. If you're the letterist, you letter it. They like to break this down different stages so that the comic gets done faster, because if one person has to do everything, the comics don't come out as fast, because one person can only work so fast. And so, yeah, if you just get really, really good and proficient inking, but you still need to know how to draw, you need a good portfolio to get that job. You can't just have a portfolio full of inking. You need to show that you actually know how to draw as well. But anyway, that industry is really tight and hard to get a job in when it comes to penciling. But anyway, so if you don't go the traditional route of getting a job at an actual company doing art, whatever it is, whether you're graphic design or tattoo artist, or working for a comic company, working for as an animator, working for a movie studio, or a video game studio doing the concept design, whatever it is. If you don't have an actual real job that pays you a check and you're working for yourself, and especially in this last one I'm talking about where you're trying to sell your own art, highly recommended to have multiple venues of revenue, not just one. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. Don't just try to do one thing. That is, don't try to only sell your original paintings on Etsy or eBay. Sell them everywhere, post them everywhere, at least in many places as you have time for. Focus more on marketing. Learn how to market, because that's where artists really fail, is they don't know how to market themselves. They don't know how to sell themselves. They don't know how to get themselves out there. Get your stuff in local galleries. Yeah, they might not sell it for much, but you need to start somewhere. You need to get your name out there. And that's more important, because more important, unfortunately, than your art is your name when it comes to selling paintings and stuff, selling art. And if you want to sell art, unfortunately, you need to learn oil painting. I mean, yeah, sure, you can sell watercolors, but they're not going to sell for nearly as much as an oil painting of the exact same subject would. You can do one painting in oil and one painting in watercolors of the exact same thing, and the oil is going to sell for more. People just don't respect watercolors as much for some reason, and it's a shame, because watercolor is awesome. Maybe because they think it doesn't have the staying power, or they think the materials are cheaper or something. They're not actually. They're expensive. If you buy good watercolors, they can be really expensive. And watercolor paper, I just bought 3 big sheets of really good watercolor paper, 100% cotton, and I think it was Arches white paper, and for the biggest paper they sell, I think it's the biggest they sell, I think it's 20 by 30. For 3 sheets of that was $80. So yeah, it's not cheap, but people's minds work the way they work, so you have to work around the industry. So if you want to make more money, learn how to do oil painting, because that's going to make you a lot more money. Acrylic is going to be the second type of painting that's going to pay you the most. And then watercolor would be like, watercolor, gouache, stuff like that. Watercolor is going to be the third one, though, because it's the third most recognized one. But both acrylic and oil are on canvas, and people seem to respect that and stuff. And I don't know, but it's just the way the industry is. You have to work around the industry. So do a lot of good oil paintings, and put together a good portfolio of oil paintings. Take your oil paintings to a gallery, to a local gallery. Don't sell yourself too short. Make sure it's not like a craft/gallery. Make sure it's an actual gallery with real art in it, and go and pitch your work to them and say, hey, here's what I do, and I think that not say I think, say this stuff will sell. You really be confident. You can't be shy. You got to be confident. Don't be cocky, but you got to sound confident. You got to let them know that your stuff is worth something and it can sell. And then hopefully you get a gallery that picks you up and goes, hey, this is great. Let's try a few pieces and see what happens. Now, if they can start selling your work, let them do the pricing for you. How much you want for this? Say, hey, you try to get what you can get out of it. And if you have to put a price on it, figure out what the prices are going for, and you can do the price per square inch, and then make it a little bit lower than figure out, okay, look at other artists that are selling oil paintings online, and let's say you want to do acrylics, whatever. Find out another artist that you think is on your level, that you're about the same level, and that you have about the same amount of followers. Because if they have tons of followers, and they can be not as good as you, but because they have so many followers, they can charge more. Anyway, so, and this is all working back towards commissioning work. You need to have work out there, right? You need to at least have a portfolio of work to show someone, for them to see, for them to want to hire you, right? Why would they want to hire you to commission something? And let's say you want to specialize in something. Let's say you want to get a lot of commissioned fantasy work, doing mermaids or something like that. Then paint a lot of mermaids. Paint a lot of fairies, or whatever it is you want to do. You want to do a lot of dragons, paint a lot of dragons. Find a niche. That's probably the best thing you can do, and the easiest way to find jobs and make money, if you want to do it this way. You want to work for commission, is find a niche, and then be really proficient at that niche, and make some fantastic pieces that people want to hire you for that, and then start posting on forums and things like that, and Facebook, groups and stuff, and just don't try to sell your stuff, right? Just go there and be yourself. Just interact with the group, talk about people's work and how much you like the thing. Just be yourself. Don't be fake. Be yourself. Don't try to sell anything yet. Don't try to ask for commissions. That's like what the worst thing you do is like go to a forum or thread or anything like that and just like, hey, I'm doing commissions. People are going to see you as a spammer. Instead, just go in there and be like, hey, how you doing? And this is I'm so and so. This is what I do. Introduce yourself. Be yourself. Talk about comment on people's art. That's great. That's fantastic. And then like, oh, hey, I'm working on this piece. Like asking for feedback is one of the greatest things you can do. And be like, hey, I'm working on this piece. What do you guys think so far? What can I do? And really take their considerations to heart. Like say, hey, thank you, I appreciate that so much. Even if you feel offended by it or you're like, I disagree with that, still say thank you. Don't be like, oh, I don't agree with that. Don't be hard-headed. Don't be stubborn. Just say thank you. That's awesome, and I'll apply that to my work. Even if you're not going to, still say thank you. You appreciate the feedback, and it means so much to you. You're going to get more feedback that way. And by getting more feedback and people start seeing your work, they're like, wow, hey, this person's got really good artwork. This is a fantastic his dragons are amazing. Or, you want to do manga commissions or something like that, and they see like your stuff is fantastic and your anime characters, whatever it is, right? And they see that's just so good, or your video game characters, and they want to hire you to do whatever it is. And now if you can find something unique too that you do and add that to your work, add some sort of uniqueness, some sort of unique style that's yours. Your naturally will develop a style naturally. Just over time, your personality will come through. You'll eventually stop imitating people, and your natural talent, your natural way of being you will start coming through your artwork, and you'll develop a style probably without even realizing you've developed a style. But people will recognize it, and people will be like, "Oh, that's so and so's work." They'll know it right away. Some artists take longer to find that style than others. I actually have a video on how to find your style. But anyway, so I should probably do another one though. It's kind of an older video. So that's how you get commissions, is having those awesome paintings out there, and there's different ways to get your name known. Like I said, having a good portfolio on DeviantArt, having good artwork on other places, posting on forums, just asking for feedback, showing other people, helping other people, talk to them about, hey, what you think, and just interacting with the group, and then slowly start oh yeah, just by the way, after you've gotten known in the group for a while, just one day, hey, by the way, I do commissions on this. But most likely, if you just interact with the group and keep showing your work and asking for feedback and like, hey, I did this piece, I'm really happy about it. What do you guys think? If you just do that, eventually someone's gonna start private messaging you. But you need to make it known that like somewhere in your signature or something that you do commissions. Because if you don't make that known, then they're not gonna know they can hire you. And just be like, say commissions open. Sometimes say commissions closed, even if they are open, just so people know that, hey, this person is active, they're getting work, And so yeah, and by doing that, you'll get commission work. People will actually private message you and say, hey, I really want this commission done by you. They like your style, they like your use of color, whatever it is they like about you. They like your personality. They just like you as a person, and you're maybe just as good as the other artists, but they like you more, and they're more likely to hire you to commission the work. And then you start getting commissions, and you might have to sell yourself short for a while, but once you get your name known, you'll get overloaded with so much work that you need to start turning work down, and you need to start charging more for your time. Anyway, so you can see a pattern there, how that goes with every industry. Anyway, so then back to galleries and why that's important. So give them, the baseline, be like, hey, if you think you can sell it for more, then please sell it for more. But I'm happy with getting this. And you might be selling yourself short at first, but that's fine because you're getting your name known. That's all you're doing at that point. You're just trying to get your name known. And as that gallery starts selling your work, and if your name starts to get known and they start selling your work, they're going to request more and more of your work, more and more of your paintings. And they might be like, hey, you know what's really selling right now and people are really wanting? Can you paint this? And then you're like, yeah, I could paint that. And maybe you don't want to paint that, but paint it at first. But make sure not to get into a typecast, because if you start painting a bunch of mermaids because that's what's in demand, and you don't enjoy painting mermaids, you might get stuck painting mermaids to where no one wants you to really cares about anything else you do. They just want your mermaid paintings. They don't care about your dragons. And you're like, oh man, I really wanted to paint dragons though. And you keep trying to paint dragons, or not try, you keep painting dragons, and try to sell them is what I meant to say. And no one cares because they want your mermaids. That's what you've made yourself known for. So just keep that in mind if you get yourself stuck into a certain thing. But hey, at least you're still doing art for a living, right? How to avoid that is not to allow yourself to get typecast, is not to take too many jobs in that one thing that everyone's demanding, unless you enjoy doing it. Portraiture is always a good one. Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I actually went door to door. This is how I first started making money as an artist. I wasn't even 18 yet. I just started going door to door with my portfolio, my portraiture. I showed them the photo, and I showed them what I actually drew. And one thing I was good that I'm glad I learned when I was younger was colors and how colors work, and not to just, when I did color portraiture with colored pencils with Prismacolor back in the day when they were much better than they are today. This was like 20 years ago, actually more than 20 years ago now. Wow, time flies. And so when I had this portraiture, the way I used color wasn't just standard. You know, I didn't just use a darker skin tone for the shadowing. You know, I threw in some red in there. I threw in some purple in there. You know, just a little bit, just enough to make it look more real. And I just learned that through trial and error. Just like, this looks too cartoony, and so I just started adding some of the colors in there and mixing in with the skin tones. And I started observing skin tones very closely. And that's when I started realizing that, hey, there's a lot more colors to skin than just what we think of as skin tones. And yeah, so anyway, I was good at portraiture, and I actually got work. And I think I got work too because I was a teenager, and here I was knocking on doors saying, hey, this is what I want to do for a living. And here's my portraiture. If you want a portrait of anybody, let me know. And one of the portrait jobs I got was really interesting. I got a portrait job doing a picture of, at the time she was very young, the daughter, I can't remember her name now. I probably shouldn't say her name even if I did remember it. But anyway, it was one of the family members of the $1 Million Man. I don't know if you guys remember back when WWE used to be called WWF. The $1 Million Man was a, big time wrestler up there with Hulk Hogan and Gravedigger and all those guys back in the day. And so the $1 Million Man, it was one of his, I think, nieces or something. Anyway, so I did a portrait for that person's daughter, one of the $1 Million Man's close relatives' daughter, and I thought that was really cool. And anyway, so then word of mouth gets around, right? And that's how you start getting more work, is that person really loves your work, and they tell their friends, and then their friends, like, always make sure you have a business card that has your name on it, has your website on it, it has your phone number on it, your email. That way they can contact you. And so every time you do a job for someone, give them that information. If it's online, then give them the equivalent online. Hey, by the way, or if you're already emailing them, they know your email. But hey, if you know anyone else that needs anything done, please let them know. And that's all I have to say. And in their head, they're already going to do that anyway. But they need to know what your name is. They need to know how people can contact you for work. So make sure you let them know, hey, if you know anyone else that wants work, this is how to have them email me here or have them call me here. Let them know how to get a hold of you. Because word of mouth is really going to be your biggest thing. So when you start working, you do a really good job for somebody and they really like your personality, they like the workflow, you are very easy to work with. Make sure you're easy to work with. Be friendly, be kind, be understanding. Sometimes it's frustrating when you do a piece and they're like, oh, I don't know, can you change this, can you change that? Be happy about it. Yeah, I can change that, no problem. You gotta be willing to take criticism. You gotta be willing to change it. But you also need a set standard, like, hey, I'm only gonna do so many changes. Like you knew what kind of work I did. I showed you the work I do. And so it's set the boundaries from the beginning. But hey, I'm willing to do up to 3 revisions. And if that means starting all over from scratch, then you have to start all over from scratch. So, don't sell yourself short there. Don't offer too many. Maybe you say, oh, I'm willing to do up to 2 revisions, or I'm willing to do, 3 minor revisions and 1 full starting from scratch again. Show them the stages along the way too. Actually, I take that back. When it comes to portraiture, you don't really show the stages along the way, because when you're in between, we're in the middle of a portrait, it doesn't look good most of the time. At least you want to show them a finished work, right, or something that looks really finished, something that looks good. But maybe show them it, make sure it's clear. How do I word this? Make sure it's clear what they want. So be like, hey, out of my portfolio, out of the different portraits, which style, which is the one that really caught your attention? What was your favorite? And then they'll be like, that one was my favorite. They can't tell you why that was your favorite. You know, they might not know. They might be like, oh, I like the blue colors, or whatever. Don't ask them why. That's your job. Your job is to go, okay, I know why this is different from all my other portraitures. I know what's different about this style. I know what I did that was different. And then implement that style when you do their portraiture. One thing I learned about portraiture that helped me get a lot more jobs, and I learned this right away, was when I did portraitures, I noticed that if I drew them exactly, I mean identically, and actually when I started getting a lot of portraiture jobs, I started just tracing it, just tracing the main features. Now, of course, you can't trace like the shading and all that. Yet that's all you. You have to do all that. If it's painting, you have to paint all that. If it's color pencil work, you have to color pencil all that. And color pencil work isn't going to go for nearly as much money as oil painting. So if you can learn oil painting, like definitely learn it. It's going to be your biggest selling type of work. But some people really like watercolor, but you're not going to sell watercolor for nearly as much money. So that's the thing. So if you want to make as much money as possible out of your artwork, definitely learn oil painting. Anyway, so one thing I learned with it is that when I drew them exact, now first I would just look at the drawing and the negative space and all that kind of stuff, and take all this time to get my drawing down perfect, so I knew the features were dead on. And after a while, I'm like, why am I spending all this time when old masters just used projectors and traced, and a lot of them use grids and things like that. That's basically like tracing, right? And so I started using grids. And my grids got smaller and smaller. I'm like, okay, why spend all this time when I can just trace the thing? All I need is the main lines and where the shadows go and stuff. Everything else is still going to take you a lot of time. It's still going to take you all the time to paint it as it would if you where you cut the time short was by tracing. You cut all that drawing time down, but you still have to do all the painting, and that's still going to take you a lot of time. But anyway, then I knew I got the face exact. Everything is exact because I traced it. So as far as how big the nose is and where the nose is, all that is exact because that part was traced. But still, I noticed that people weren't super happy. Like they'd be like, they wouldn't know exactly why. They'd be like, it looks just like them and stuff. I like it. But they didn't know what they didn't really like about it. So that wasn't going to give me another job. I can tell by the look on their face. They were happy. They paid for it. But something about it they didn't like so much. And I couldn't figure out what it was because the technique was right, the colors were right, dead on, looked just like them. Every shading I was really careful about every shading being exactly where it was by using different measuring and grids and stuff like that. And like, this is where the highlight goes, this is where the midtone. I made sure it was pretty much like a copy of what the person was, but in an artistic style. And I'm like, okay. So one day, I'm like, what if people aren't happy with their facial features? Like what if, and oftentimes it wasn't their own self. They would buy a portrait for their wife or portrait of their daughter or kids. Like typically when people buy portraiture, it's not of themselves unless they're, I don't know, kind of arrogant or cocky or something. Not to say that it's cocky to do that, I'm just saying that most of the time that was the case. But they would usually hire you to do a portrait of somebody else. Mostly it was their kids or their grandchildren or of their lovers or something. And so they see that person a certain way. They see him a certain beauty, and I think we're tainted in how we see people. And I studied psychology and stuff at this time, so I started applying the psychology that I learned and how the brain works. And I'm like, you know what? I know that we misconceive how we see people. We love them, so we see them differently. We overlook their what we would consider their blemishes, right? We overlook the fact they might have too large of a nose, or the eyes might be too close together and things like that. So I realized that I don't need to capture an exact likeness. I need to capture a feeling, a mood. And you could do that with colors and all that kind of stuff, but I need to capture how they see the person. And so I started covering up those shortcomings, what I would think people might see as a blemish. If their nose was too big or too wide, I would make it narrower, a little bit smaller, but still look like it would still be their nose. I just make it smaller. And one of the tricks I would do, this was back, when everything was done with pencil and paper and all that kind of stuff, tracing paper, all that. So one of the things I would do is after I would trace the main face, is I would take the nose, and then I would, how did I do that? I would shrink it down, I think with my because we had computers and stuff. It's just digital art wasn't really something you did very much, and I didn't even have Photoshop at the time yet, because this is before I was 18. And so I would either redraw the nose by looking at it, make it a little bit smaller, and then putting that nose and tracing it onto the other main face I'd already drawn. Or I would, I know that's how I did it sometimes, but I think once I figure out a way to reduce the size with a copier, like at Staples, whatever, they can reduce it by 20%, whatever it is, 10%. So I would take it in there, and I would have them reduce the picture by 10 or 20%. Then I would trace that nose onto the regular size face that was 10% bigger, 20% bigger. And now the nose was in the same place it needed to be, but it was just a little bit smaller. And then I just said, what, it's much easier for me just to just look at the nose and draw it, because I already knew how to do that. I already knew how to just look at something and draw it. It just took a lot longer than tracing. So then I would draw the nose a little bit smaller, and I noticed that that made people so much happier when I did that. I didn't tell them I did that. I just did it, and here's the final piece, and they were like, wow, it looks just like him. This is so amazing. Thank you so much. And I can see their faces were much happier, and I got, word to mouth jobs from that person versus the ones where I made their noses their actual size. So that was one thing I noticed is people they see the person a certain way, and you need to capture that beauty, and oftentimes that means making the nose a little bit smaller. It sounds weird, but it really did work for me. I just made the nose smaller, and boom, they're like, wow, that's amazing. And so I actually one time I made two different versions of the drawing. I did one where their nose was normal size, another one where the nose was a little bit smaller. Didn't tell them the difference. I'm like, hey, which one do you want? I did two versions for you. That way you can choose what style you like better. And they chose the smaller nose. I'm like, that's interesting. So I tried that a couple times, and it was always they chose the smaller nose version without them knowing what they were choosing. They didn't know why they liked it better, because they didn't know the nose was smaller, because it was just a little bit smaller than normal. Like, I like this one. This one looks a little bit more like them. Like, it's funny because it actually doesn't look as much like them, but it looks how they see them in their head. And anyway, I talked way too much about this last part, but this is a really good way to make money as portraiture, because there aren't a lot of good portrait artists out there. And if you can excel at it and be really good at it, especially mess with your colors, offer something unique, where it looks like them, but you just have this really cool way of expressing colors. And that's a way to express yourself, because doing portraiture after a while does get boring, because you're just drawing what you see. And that's why I just started tracing it, But even the painting process or the coloring process or the pencil work process, still started getting boring to me, and doing all that rendering and shading and stuff. And so one thing I realized is that style is a big thing. Like, I can save a lot of time if I go more for just the form and shadow versus going for like super detailed hyperrealism rendering. And that's not what people wanted, really. I mean, there's a few people that want that, but mostly the ones that sold the most were the ones that were, and that made people the happiest, were the ones that were more stylized. By stylized, I don't mean that it didn't look real. It's where I focus more on form and shadow, where the shadow is, where the highlights are, where the midtones are. I focus more on getting that right versus getting every little detail right, every little blemish. You don't want that. They don't want to see that anyway, honestly. And they want nice porcelain skin. Maybe there's a birthmark. I put that in there, but I definitely wouldn't draw like all the little crevices of their skin or wrinkles or lines in their forehead. Like, all that's gone. And if I painted it, all that's not painted in there. Yeah. So, and then hair. Like, I wouldn't paint every strand of hair, obviously, like, and draw or try to draw every strand of hair. I would treat it as a form that has light and shadow and midtone, and then I would add just a few little details here and there, a few little wisping hair, stuff like that, and that goes a long way. And it also saved me a lot of rendering time, just drawing time or painting time, rendering all those details in there, painting all those details, drawing all those details, and so then I was able to make work quicker, and people actually liked it better. And one other thing I noticed too is people typically liked, if it's females, they liked a little bit fuller lips. So if I was tracing the lips, and I'd go back and forth. Sometimes I would get bored of tracing, so I'd just go back to, I just want to draw this one by looking at it, using different techniques that I've learned on how to draw it, what it is you're looking at, negative space and angles and things like that, relationships to each other of objects to one to another. And then I would make the lips a little bit fuller. So I would just trace them a little bit bigger than they were. And then I'd render everything out exactly like the photo looks, except for the lips. The lips are a little bit bigger, nose a little bit smaller. And I noticed that that got me a lot more likes. Like people, I can tell people liked it. Now, it wasn't until years later that I really learned art. I mean, really learned the foundations. Went back and learned the foundations, truly learned them, not just ignored and skip past the parts of the book that talk about light and shadow and we all do that, right? When we're kids, even when we're adults, I think we do it. We look at these art books and we draw what's in it and copy what's in it, but we don't read all the paragraphs. That's so important to read everything, to understand what they're talking about, because they're trying to explain what light and form actually is. And some are better teachers than others, and so you might have to learn from a few teachers before someone finally says it in a way that clicks, where you're like, oh, that makes sense. And that's one thing that I've noticed I'm good at, because I've had these students. I have over 30,000 students now, and they will tell me, hey, I've learned from this guy and that guy, but it wasn't until I found you that this subject of perspective, for example, finally made sense to me, or that light and shadow, the way you explain light and shadow brought it to my mind in a way that no one else explained it before, and it made sense to me in a way that it never made sense to me before, and the importance of it, and how realistic your drawing can be by just using light and shadow and don't even put any details in at all. And anyway, so once I learned how to do that, then my portraiture really went to a whole new level. And yeah, so okay, I can talk about this topic for a long time. I have a lot of knowledge in marketing and selling your art and marketing and selling in general for any business type of model, any type. It doesn't matter what you're selling. The marketing is the same. But yeah, so in the end, your portfolio is what is super important. So make sure to have a really good portfolio. Work on that. Practice, practice, practice. Keep getting better. Keep getting better. And hey, you can still sell your work even though you're not as good as you want to be yet. Throw it out there. Let you know you're open for commissions. Start. Don't like right away say you're open for commissions. First, just share your work. Like on DeviantArt, just share your work, comment on people's work, just get your work known. Try to build up an audience so that, because if no one's seeing your work, no one's going to care that it says you're open for commissions, because no one is seeing it, right? No one sees that open for commission line if no one is looking at your DeviantArt page. If you're only getting like a few visitors, then no one's really seeing it yet, right? So you got to get your work known first and get people looking at it and get people interested in it. Then you'll naturally get people asking you, hey, do you do commissions? But at that point, once you start getting a decent amount of viewers, then say, hey, by the way, I do commissions if anyone's interested. And that's it. That's all you have to say. And people will look at your work and they'll be like, oh, cool. And every one of your paintings after that, from that point on, you can always put it in the description anyway, I guess, even when you first start out, because it can't hurt. Just don't be like cocky about it. Just be like, hey, by the way, I'm open for commissions. And that's it. And just make it a line somewhere in the description of the painting or the drawing. And you'd be surprised that when you start building an audience of, people be like, hey, as long as your price is reasonable, they're willing to pay for it because they like you as a person. They like your work. They like your style. Something about you and your style, even though you're not where you want to be yet, you're not as good as you want to be yet, they'll still hire you to do your work. And I know this from personal experience, because when I was a teenager, yeah, I was pretty good at looking at stuff and drawing it. Now I'm trying to get to that same level of drawing from my imagination. And when I think of my imagination, like this work here is from my imagination. I think when I work from my imagination, my work from imagination is getting better and better. And my last few watercolors, stuff like that, that's all from imagination. And it took a long time to get to that point. I remember when I first started getting decent at drawing from imagination, I look back at some of that older work, and I'm like, that's okay, Now I look at it and some of the stuff looks like I'm using references. It looks as good as my work back when I was younger doing references. But now I can draw stuff that doesn't exist, where I don't need a reference because there is no reference that I can use because it doesn't exist, and that's cool. It's cool to be able to draw something that doesn't exist in real life, and I can draw that thing and make it look like like as if I used a reference, and that's cool. But anyway, so the point is that my rendering skills weren't the best. Yeah, I would draw somebody and make them look like them, but my drawing, like the actual technique, wasn't the best. But people still bought it because it was a good price and it looked good. And I see a lot of DeviantArt people that get it. Stop it!
No.
Stop fucking barking. Beep! 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 And so I see a lot of these deviant artists out there, and they get, jobs, and their work isn't the greatest. It's okay. And some of it, I've seen some deviant artists that just have a really good following because they're cool people, but their art is, they're very young, and their art is, it needs a long way to go. And it's not something I would ever think someone would buy, because it's very it's okay, it's okay artwork, but people buy it because the price is right and because they like the person. So keep that in mind. You can still make sales even if you're not like the artist you want to be yet. And you can make those little bit of sales and get a name known for yourself, and you'll keep practicing, keep getting better and better and better. And next thing you know, you'll have tons of commissions coming in, and you'll be charging a lot more money for it because you're getting better and better and people are willing to pay it. So yeah, but having that good portfolio, that's vital. And then go out there and start applying for jobs. Okay, thank you. I hope this has helped you at all. The information I've shared here in this video, I know it's kind of long, and but I think those stories are important to understand how it can work for somebody like me, like how it actually works, and seeing that it works. Me just saying, hey, go and do this. I could have made this video 10 minutes long. Do this, do that, do this, and go get jobs. But hearing real life stories to me has always been inspirational, and has always helped me understand the topic better, like how important it really is, because I had a real story, a real experience that I just listened to or that I read about, and how it actually applied in the real world, and seeing that it actually worked. It's kind of like evidence for me, and so that's why I like hearing that kind of stuff. And yeah, so okay. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please do me a favor. Go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe. After you subscribe, go ahead and hit the notifications icon there on the homepage. So click on my nickname, Learn to Draw, that takes you to my channel's homepage, and you'll see the subscription there on the right-hand side. Next to after you subscribe, you'll see a little bell icon that shows up. Click that bell icon, hit notifications. Otherwise, YouTube is not going to let you know that I make new videos. Another thing you do is in the description, I have my Facebook page, the Master Painting Now Facebook page. Go ahead and follow that page. So go to that page, follow the Facebook page, and I also post my videos there. That way you'll be updated on Facebook. So yeah, that way you at least have, otherwise I'm probably going to fall off your radar, and you'll miss out on really tons of great content. I give away a lot of stuff, a lot of free art stuff, art supplies. I'm going to be giving away a Wacom Cintiq. It's a $1,000 drawing tablet, just fantastic. You draw right on the screen. It's the best out there. And yeah, so I always do good giveaways at least once a month. So yeah, if you want to stay in the loop, I recommend doing those two things. And the very least, I highly recommend signing up for the Facebook page, Master Painting Now, and just follow that page, because your Facebook is pretty good about notifying you when new stuff, a page that you're signed up for. But it might fly right by. Whereas if you sign up for YouTube and do the notifications thing, that'll definitely let you know that, oh yeah, okay, I have a notification here. And just check back, go ahead and save my YouTube page and check back every now and again, just in case you don't get notified. I post all the time now, so if you go a week or so without seeing nothing from me, it's probably because YouTube and Facebook you missed it, or they didn't show it to you. And so just come back and check, hey, does this have anything new up? All right, again, thank you. Comment if you have any questions. I love answering questions, so yeah, any questions at all, feel free to ask them. Don't be shy. And if you enjoy this video, I'm sure other people enjoy it too, so go ahead and share it. I appreciate it. All right.